Dominic Blackwell had spent 18 years building an empire no one dared to challenge. In exactly 2 weeks, he would marry Serena Hartwell, the perfect woman, the perfect alliance, the final piece of a life he had meticulously controlled. Nothing was left to chance. Not the ceremony, not the guests, not even the future that awaited him, until a small knock shattered everything. At a red light in the heart of Las Vegas, a little girl appeared beside his car barefoot, trembling, with eyes far too sharp for her age. She didn't beg, she didn't plead. She leaned closer and whispered something that made the world stop. "She's planning to deceive you." And just like that, doubt crept into a man who had never questioned anything. At 37, Dominic had conquered everything a man could dream of conquering. His empire stretched across Las Vegas like a dark, unshakable shadow. 6 casinos generated rivers of cash every single night. 12 luxury hotels bore his name in golden letters. And beneath it all, an underground network controlled every significant deal, every important decision, every whispered secret in the city of sin. The Blackwell name was spoken with fear and respect in equal measure, from the highest penthouses to the lowest gambling dens. His home sat atop the Obsidian, the crown jewel of his casino empire, a $50 million penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the glittering madness of Nevada. From that height, Dominic could see everything he owned, everything he had built from absolute nothing, after burying his father 18 years ago. That tragedy had transformed a grieving teenager into something far more dangerous, something the underworld had learned to fear. That Monday morning, Dominic left his penthouse at exactly 7 o'clock. Punctuality was religion to him. Weakness was death, and tardiness was weakness. Marcus, his driver and personal bodyguard of 15 loyal years, waited beside the black Rolls-Royce Phantom in the private underground garage. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwell." Marcus opened the rear door with practiced precision, his massive frame moving with surprising grace. The Venetian first for the contract review, then the meeting with the Miami people at 10. They're getting impatient about the expansion. The Las Vegas streets crawled with typical Monday morning traffic. Tourists stumbled back to their hotels after weekend benders. Locals rushed to jobs that paid a fraction of what Dominic made in a single minute. Inside the climate-controlled luxury of his Rolls-Royce, Dominic reviewed documents on his tablet. Each signature was worth millions. Each decision reshaped the city's landscape according to his vision. The car stopped at a red light near downtown, 3 blocks from the old district where tourists rarely ventured and police rarely patrolled. A small knock on the tinted window shattered the morning silence. A little girl stood outside, pressing her tiny hand against the dark glass, perhaps 6 years old, maybe younger. Her blonde hair was matted and filthy, tangled like it hadn't seen a brush or clean water in months. Her clothes were torn and stained, hanging off her painfully thin frame like discarded rags. Her feet were completely bare against the scorching Nevada asphalt. "Just another street kid, sir." Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror with obvious disdain. "This area is crawling with them. I'll drive off the moment the light changes." But Dominic raised his hand, stopping Marcus mid-sentence. Something in the child's eyes had captured his attention completely. They were blue, startlingly bright and intelligent against her dirt-smudged face. Not the desperate, hollow, defeated look he had witnessed in countless beggars over his years in this city. No, these eyes held sharp intelligence, fierce determination, and something else that made his instincts scream: fear, genuine terror. But strangely, not for herself. Against every habit and instinct, Dominic lowered his window exactly 3 inches, enough to hear, not enough for danger. "I don't need my windows cleaned, little one. Move along." The girl glanced around nervously, her small body trembling slightly, then pressed her face closer to the narrow gap. Her voice dropped to an urgent whisper, barely audible over the city noise. "Mister, I need to tell you something very important. About Miss Serena." The name hit Dominic like a bucket of ice water poured directly into his veins. His heart, which hadn't raced from fear in 15 years, suddenly pounded against his ribs. "What did you just say? How do you know that name?" The girl's blue eyes locked onto his with an intensity that no 6-year-old should ever possess. Eyes that had seen too much, known too much, survived too much. "She's going to kill you." The traffic light turned green. Marcus accelerated automatically, years of professional instinct taking over before Dominic could react. The Rolls-Royce glided forward, leaving the little girl standing alone on the cracked sidewalk. Dominic spun around in his seat, pressing his face against the rear window, watching her small figure shrink and disappear into the crowd of mourning pedestrians. "Stop the car." His voice came out hoarse, barely recognizable. "Sir, we have the Venetian meeting and I said stop the car. Marcus, turn around." Now, Marcus had served Dominic for 15 years. He had seen his boss order executions without blinking, negotiate with ruthless cartels without breaking a sweat, and face down federal agents with nothing but a cold smile. But he had never heard this tone before, this edge of something almost like fear. The Rolls-Royce made an illegal U-turn, tires screeching against asphalt. They reached the intersection in under a minute. The girl was gone. Dominic threw open his door before the car fully stopped, ignoring Marcus's protests about security protocols. His Italian leather shoes hit the dirty sidewalk as he scanned every direction with desperate intensity. Nothing, just the usual morning chaos of downtown Las Vegas. Hungover tourists, rushing workers, homeless veterans pushing shopping carts. No blonde little girl with torn clothes and eyes too old for her face. "Find her," Dominic ordered. "Search every alley, every corner, every doorway, within 6 blocks." For 20 agonizing minutes, they searched. Marcus questioned shop owners while Dominic approached homeless men sleeping under cardboard shelters. He offered money, described the girl in detail, showed genuine desperation that surprised even himself. Nobody knew her. Nobody had seen her. It was as if she had materialized from thin air just to deliver her message, and then vanished back into nothing. The meeting at the Venetian was a disaster. Dominic sat at the head of the conference table, surrounded by his most trusted lieutenants, discussing expansion plans worth hundreds of millions of dollars. His responses were monosyllabic. His attention was completely absent. His eyes kept drifting to the window, seeing nothing but a pair of frightened blue eyes and dirty blonde hair. How did a 6-year-old street child know Serena's name? How did she know about their relationship? What else did she know that he didn't? The questions spiraled endlessly through his mind like vultures circling wounded prey. Someone wanted him dead. That much was clear. Enemies surrounded him like sharks around bleeding meat, but who would use a child as a messenger, and why warn him at all? After the meeting, Dominic locked himself in his private office and made a single phone call. "Tony, I need you here within the hour. Tell no one." Tony Rossi arrived in 45 minutes. The head of Dominic's security operations was a former FBI agent who had crossed to the profitable side of the law 12 years ago. If anyone could uncover secrets, it was Tony. "I need a complete investigation," Dominic said, his voice low and controlled despite the chaos raging inside him. "Serena Hartwell. Everything about her. Birth records, school history, past relationships, financial records, family connections. Everything from the day she was born until this very moment." Tony raised an eyebrow but knew better than to question. "How deep do you want me to dig, boss?" "Deep enough to find hell itself, if that's where the truth is hiding." That night, Dominic lay perfectly still in his king-sized bed. The silk sheets probably cost more than most people earned in a month. The penthouse was silent except for soft breathing beside him. Serena slept peacefully, her beautiful face relaxed in innocent slumber, her dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. She looked like an angel. She smelled like expensive perfume and promises. But as Dominic watched her chest rise and fall with each breath, his mind kept replaying the little girl's words over and over. "She's going to kill you. Who are you really, Serena Hartwell? What secrets hide behind that perfect smile?" Sleep never came. Morning sunlight flooded the penthouse kitchen, painting everything in shades of gold and honey. Serena stood at the marble counter in a silk robe, her dark hair cascading down her back as she prepared breakfast. Fresh fruit, Greek yogurt, artisan toast with imported jam. She moved with practiced grace, humming softly to herself like a woman without a single worry in the world. Dominic watched her from the doorway, coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. He had spent the entire sleepless night studying this woman from a distance. Every gesture, every smile, every whispered word of affection over the past 2 years now seemed like evidence in an investigation he never wanted to conduct. Was she truly the loving fiancée she appeared to be? Or was something darker lurking beneath that flawless surface? "Good morning, darling." Serena turned and smiled, her eyes lighting up with what seemed like genuine warmth. "You look tired. Did you sleep poorly? Restless night. Business problems." She walked over and pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek, her perfume enveloping him in familiar sweetness. "You work too hard. After the wedding, we should take a long vacation. Maybe extend the honeymoon to a full month. Just you and me, far away from all this stress." Dominic forced himself to smile back. "That sounds perfect." They sat across from each other at the breakfast table, the Las Vegas skyline stretching behind them like a kingdom awaiting its king. Dominic took a bite of toast he couldn't taste, then asked casually, "Have you talked to your parents lately? About the wedding arrangements?" Something flickered across Serena's face. Just for a fraction of a second, her eyes went cold, empty, like windows suddenly shuttered against a storm. Then it vanished so quickly that Dominic almost convinced himself he had imagined it. "Oh, you know how they are," she laughed softly, stirring her coffee with delicate fingers. "Mother is obsessed with the flower arrangements. She calls me 3 times a day about roses versus peonies. Father just wants to make sure the wine selection is worthy of the Hartwell name." She tilted her head with a playful pout. "You're asking so many questions this morning, making me miss them terribly." Before Dominic could respond, Serena rose gracefully and slipped behind his chair, her arms wrapped around his shoulders, her cheek pressing against his. The warmth of her body seeped through his shirt. "I've been so stressed about the wedding, darling. Do I seem tense to you? I just want everything to be absolutely perfect for us." Her voice was honey and silk. Her touch was comforting and familiar. Dominic felt his suspicions wavering like candle flames in the wind. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. Serena reached for it casually, not hiding the screen at all. Dominic caught a glimpse of the message, a conversation with Mom about final dress fittings and bridesmaid gifts. Normal things. Innocent things. Maybe he was being paranoid. Maybe 18 years of survival in the underworld had finally poisoned his ability to trust anyone completely. A homeless child could easily be paid to spread lies. His enemies would love nothing more than to destroy his upcoming marriage through psychological warfare. Serena kissed his temple one more time before gliding toward the bedroom to dress. "I have a spa appointment this afternoon. Wedding preparations are exhausting, you know." Dominic nodded, watching her disappear down the hallway. She was perfect. Every answer, every gesture, every smile. Perhaps too perfect. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the doubts gnawing at his mind like hungry rats. This was Serena, the woman who had shared his bed for 2 years, the woman who had nursed him through the flu last winter, the woman who laughed at his terrible jokes and remembered his coffee order without asking. A street child's wild accusation meant nothing, and yet, that momentary flash of coldness in Serena's eyes when he mentioned Boston, that split second when warmth had drained from her face like blood from a wound, it haunted him throughout his morning meetings. It distracted him during a conference call worth $50 million. It echoed in his mind louder than any gunshot he had ever heard. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. The question was whether the danger was real, or if he was slowly losing his mind. By late afternoon, Dominic could no longer ignore the voice screaming inside his head. He canceled his remaining meetings with vague excuses about personal matters. His lieutenants exchanged confused glances, but knew better than to question. For a man who had never missed a single appointment in 18 years of running his empire, this was unprecedented behavior. Dominic left the Obsidian alone. No bodyguards, no driver, no entourage of armed men watching his every step. Just a man in an expensive suit walking the cracked sidewalks of downtown Las Vegas like any ordinary citizen. It was the first time in over a decade that the king had descended from his throne to walk among common people. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as Dominic navigated streets he normally only saw through tinted windows. He approached homeless encampments beneath highway overpasses, spoke to veterans pushing shopping carts full of aluminum cans, questioned prostitutes taking smoke breaks between clients. Each conversation followed the same pattern. A $100 bill extended, a description of a little blonde girl, about 6 years old, wearing torn clothes and no shoes. Most shook their heads. Some grabbed the money and lied about seeing her yesterday, last week, an hour ago. Their eyes gave them away every time. 18 years of reading, people had made Dominic an expert in detecting deception. The irony was not lost on him. A mafia boss searching desperately for a street child who might hold the key to exposing another deception. After nearly 2 hours of fruitless searching, Dominic found an elderly woman sitting outside a pawn shop, feeding pigeons from a paper bag. Her weathered face suggested years of hard living, but her eyes remained sharp and alert. "Blonde little girl?" The woman squinted up at him, clearly suspicious of his expensive attire. "What's a man like you want with a street kid?" Dominic knelt down to her level, ignoring how the dirty sidewalk stained his $5,000 suit. "I just need to talk to her. She's not in any trouble." The old woman studied him for a long moment, then shrugged her bony shoulders. "There's a child fitting that description who wanders around here sometimes. Skinny thing. Talks about looking for her mama. Poor baby sleeps behind Street Mary's church most nights, near the dumpsters where the kitchen throws out day-old bread. Looking for her mother, that's what she says. Keeps asking everyone if they've seen a woman named Elena. Breaks my heart, honestly. A little angel like that, all alone in this cruel city." Dominic pressed $300 into the woman's weathered hand and headed toward Street Mary's without another word. The old Catholic church stood like a forgotten monument between a liquor store and a boarded-up laundromat. Its white paint was peeling, its stained glass windows cracked in several places. Behind the building, near overflowing dumpsters and scattered garbage bags, Dominic found her. The little girl sat on the church's back steps, sharing a stale piece of bread with a skeletal dog whose ribs protruded painfully beneath matted caramel fur. She looked even smaller and thinner than Dominic remembered. Her bare feet were covered in cuts and blisters. Her blue eyes, however, remained as sharp and alert as before. She looked up at his approach without any trace of surprise. "I knew you would come back," she said calmly, tearing off another piece of bread for the grateful dog. "People like you never stop thinking once someone plants doubt in their heads." Dominic stood there, momentarily speechless. This child spoke with wisdom far beyond her years, as if she had already lived several lifetimes of hardship and observation. Slowly, deliberately, he sat down beside her on the filthy concrete steps. His suit was already ruined anyway. What were a few more stains compared to the answers he desperately needed? "What's your name, little one?" "Lily." "Just Lily?" "Lily Morgan." Dominic studied her profile. Dirt-smudged cheeks, tangled hair, determined chin. She kept her gaze fixed on the stray dog, feeding it with gentle care despite having almost nothing herself. "Why are you living on the streets alone, Lily? Where is your mother?" For the first time, the girl's composure cracked slightly. Her small shoulders slumped. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I don't know. One day Mama went to work and never came home. I waited and waited, but she never came back." She finally looked up at him, those haunting blue eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I've been looking for her ever since." Dominic took Lily to a small diner 3 blocks from the church. Nothing fancy, just a family-owned place with cracked vinyl booths and a tired waitress who didn't ask questions about the strange pair walking through the door. A powerful man in a ruined designer suit and a barefoot street child with a stray dog following loyally behind. "Order anything you want," Dominic said, sliding into the booth across from her. Lily stared at the laminated menu like it contained secrets of the universe. Her small fingers trembled slightly as she traced the pictures of hamburgers and milkshakes. When the food arrived, a cheeseburger, fries, chicken soup, and the largest chocolate milkshake the diner offered, she ate with desperate hunger, but surprising restraint. No grabbing, no stuffing, just steady, grateful bites that suggested she had been taught manners even in poverty. "When did you last have a hot meal?" Dominic asked quietly. Lily paused mid-bite, thinking seriously. "Maybe 4 days ago. A nice church lady gave me half her sandwich. Before that," she shrugged her thin shoulders. "I don't remember." Something twisted painfully in Dominic's chest. A feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Something dangerously close to compassion. "Tell me about your mother, Lily. Tell me everything." The girl set down her burger and wiped her mouth with a napkin, her movements surprisingly proper for a child living on the streets. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of memories too heavy for such small shoulders. "Daddy died when I was 4. Mama said it was an accident at work, but I saw her crying at night when she thought I was sleeping. She cried for weeks and weeks." Lily's blue eyes grew distant. "After that, Mama started working at some company. She never told me what it was, but she came home very late every night. Sometimes she looked scared, sometimes she looked sad, but she always kissed me goodnight, no matter how late." "What kind of company?" "I don't know. Mama never talked about it. She just said it was important work that helped pay for our apartment and my school." Lily took a long sip of her milkshake. 8 months ago, Mama left for work in the morning like always. She kissed my forehead and said she would bring home pizza for dinner, but she never came back." Dominic leaned forward. "What did you do?" "I waited. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. I kept the door locked like Mama taught me, and ate everything in the refrigerator until there was nothing left." Her voice wavered slightly. "Then the landlord came. He was angry about the rent. He threw all our stuff on the sidewalk and changed the locks. I didn't know what to do, so I just started walking, looking for Mama everywhere." 8 months, Dominic repeated quietly. "You've been living on the streets for 8 months." Lily nodded, feeding a piece of burger to the stray dog who had curled up beneath the table. "Mama taught me how to survive. She always said, 'Watch people carefully, Lily. Remember faces. Listen more than you speak. Trust your instincts.' I think she knew something bad might happen someday." Dominic filed that information away. A mother who taught her young daughter survival skills. A mother who anticipated danger. This was not an ordinary woman. "Now tell me about Serena. How do you know her?" Lily's expression hardened with a seriousness no 6-year-old should possess. "I saw her twice in the downtown area near the old warehouses. Both times she was with men in expensive suits, dangerous-looking men with cold eyes. She glanced around the diner nervously before continuing in a whisper. I'm good at hiding in places where nobody notices me. I heard them talking about killing someone. They mentioned your name, Mr. Blackwell. They said after the wedding, everything would belong to them. Dominic's blood ran cold. Did you recognize any of these men? Lily shook her head slowly. But I know Miss Serena is very dangerous. The way she smiled while they talked about murder. The little girl shuddered. It wasn't a normal smile. It was like a snake watching a mouse. After leaving the diner, Dominic made a phone call that set everything in motion. Within an hour, Lily was settled in a secure apartment on the outskirts of Las Vegas. Nothing luxurious, but clean, safe, and completely off the grid. Two of Dominic's most trusted men stood guard outside the door with strict orders to protect the child with their lives. The stray dog came too, curling up at Lily's feet on a soft bed, perhaps the first real bed either of them had seen in months. I'll come back tomorrow, Dominic promised, kneeling to meet Lily's eyes. You're safe here. No one will hurt you. The little girl nodded solemnly, clutching a stuffed bear one of the guards had hastily purchased from a nearby store. Find out the truth, Mr. Blackwell. And please, if you find anything about my mama, I will. He squeezed her small hand gently. I promise. The meeting with Tony Rossi took place in the basement of an abandoned warehouse on the industrial edge of the city. No cameras, no witnesses, no electronic devices except for Tony's encrypted laptop. In the world of shadows and secrets, paranoia was simply common sense. Tony was already waiting when Dominic arrived. The former FBI agent looked troubled. His normally composed face creased with concern as he spread several folders across a dusty metal table. Boss, we have a serious problem. Dominic pulled up a chair and sat down heavily. Tell me everything. Tony opened the first folder, revealing printed documents and photographs. Serena Hartwell's background is clean. Too clean. Suspiciously clean. Birth certificate from Boston General Hospital. High school diploma from Phillips Academy. Bachelor's degree from Boston University. Everything checks out on paper. But when I dug deeper, the cracks started showing. Tony slid a photograph across the table. There are 0 photographs of Serena Hartwell anywhere before 3 years ago. No social media presence, no yearbook photos, no family pictures. For a woman who supposedly grew up in Boston high society, she's essentially invisible before 2022. Dominic studied the photograph, a recent shot of Serena at a charity gala, smiling radiantly beside him. The woman he had planned to marry in 2 weeks now felt like a complete stranger. What about her family? The banking dynasty she always mentions? Tony shook his head grimly. I contacted every major bank in Boston. There is no Hartwell family in the banking industry. Never has been. Her supposed parents don't exist in any database I can access. No property records, no tax filings, no social security numbers matching the names she provided. She invented her entire identity. It appears so, boss. And there's more. Tony pulled out another document. We discovered that Serena maintains a second phone, a burner. She makes encrypted calls every few days to an unknown number. Our tech people are trying to trace it, but whoever's on the other end is extremely professional. Military-grade encryption protocols. Dominic felt ice spreading through his veins. Every instinct that had kept him alive for 18 years was now screaming danger. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to create this identity and place her in my life, he said slowly. This isn't a random con artist looking for money. This is a planned operation. Agreed. Tony closed the folders. This level of sophistication suggests one of the major organizations. Chicago, Miami, possibly even overseas connections. Someone wants you dead badly enough to invest years and significant resources into this infiltration. Dominic stood and walked to the grimy window. Staring out at the desert landscape, enemies surrounded him on all sides. That was nothing new, but an enemy sleeping in his bed, whispering sweet lies against his skin that was a different kind of threat altogether. Find out who's behind this, Tony. Trace those calls. Dig into every moment of her existence. I want to know who hired her and why. It might take time, boss. These people covered their tracks well. Then work faster. Dominic's voice hardened to steel. My wedding is in 12 days. I need answers before then. After Tony departed to continue his investigation, Dominic remained alone in the warehouse. He pulled out his phone and stared at the screen, a photo of Serena laughing at dinner last month, her eyes sparkling with apparent joy. Every kiss, every touch, every whispered declaration of love now felt like poison. Who are you really, Serena? And what do you want from me? The realization struck Dominic like a bullet to the chest during his drive back from the warehouse. If Serena was truly a planted assassin working for a rival organization, she had eyes everywhere. Spies, informants, people watching his every move and reporting back to her handlers. The safe house where Lily was staying might already be compromised, and if Serena discovered that a street child had warned her target about the plot, Lily would be dead before sunrise. Dominic grabbed his phone and dialed Marcus. Change of plans. Pick up the girl from the safe house and bring her to the penthouse. Use the service elevator. Tell no one. The penthouse, sir? Marcus's voice betrayed his confusion. But Miss Hartwell Serena left for New York this morning. Something about final dress fittings with her mother. The irony of that lie tasted bitter on Dominic's tongue. She won't be back for 3 days. That gives us time. 2 hours later, Marcus arrived at the penthouse with Lily and her loyal stray dog in tow. The massive bodyguard looked utterly bewildered, carrying a small child through the private garage like fragile cargo he had no training to handle. Boss, Marcus whispered as Lily gazed around the marble lobby with wide eyes. May I ask what's happening? No. Dominic took Lily's hand gently. You may not. Just know that this child is under my personal protection. Anyone who threatens her answers to me directly. The penthouse seemed to overwhelm Lily completely. She walked through the vast living room in stunned silence, her bare feet leaving faint, dirty prints on the pristine white carpet. Her eyes traveled across the floor-to-ceiling windows, the crystal chandeliers, the artwork worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. The stray dog stayed pressed against her legs, equally intimidated by the unfamiliar luxury. This is where you live? Lily whispered. Yes. And for now, this is where you'll live too. Dominic led her to the guest bathroom, a space larger than most studio apartments, with a rainfall shower and a bathtub that could comfortably fit 4 adults. He turned on the warm water and set out fresh towels, expensive soaps, and a fluffy bathrobe. Take as long as you need. When you're done, there will be clean clothes waiting outside the door. Lily hesitated at the threshold, her small hand gripping the doorframe. You don't need to do all this, Mr. Blackwell. I just need to find my mama. That's all I want. Something cracked inside Dominic's carefully constructed walls. This child had nothing, wanted nothing except her mother, and yet she had risked her own safety to warn a complete stranger about danger. I know, he said softly, but let me help you anyway. An hour later, Lily emerged, transformed. The grime and street dust had been washed away, revealing delicate features and golden hair that now shone under the penthouse lights. She wore a simple white t-shirt and sweatpants that one of Dominic's staff had purchased hastily, far too big for her thin frame, but clean and soft. They sat together on the living room couch, the Las Vegas skyline glittering behind them like scattered diamonds. The stray dog had been fed premium steak from the penthouse kitchen, and now slept contentedly by the fireplace. Tell me more about your mother, Dominic said. What was she like? Lily's face softened with love and longing. Mama was the smartest person in the whole world. She always knew when something was wrong, even before it happened. She could look at someone and know if they were lying. She taught you well. She taught me everything. Lily pulled her knees up to her chest, making herself small. She always said, watch people carefully, Lily. Remember faces. Listen more than you speak. Trust your instincts. She made me practice every day, like a game. Now I understand why. Dominic studied the child's face, seeing echoes of a mother he had never met. A woman intelligent enough to teach a 6-year-old survival skills that would make trained operatives jealous. A woman who clearly anticipated danger. What else do you remember about her work? She never talked about it. But sometimes she came home with bruises she tried to hide. Sometimes she cried when she thought I was asleep. Lily's voice dropped. I think Mama was scared of someone. Really scared. But she always smiled for me. She always said everything would be okay. A mother who lived in fear but shielded her daughter from the truth. A mother who vanished without a trace 8 months ago. Dominic made a decision. Your mother's name is Elena Morgan, correct? He leaned forward, meeting Lily's hopeful blue eyes. I'm going to help you find her. I have resources, people who can search in ways the police never could. I promise you, Lily, we will find your mother. Tony Rossi arrived at the penthouse the following morning with a thick folder tucked under his arm and dark circles under his eyes. He had clearly been working through the night, fueled by coffee and the urgency in his boss's voice. Lily was still sleeping in the guest room, exhausted from months of survival on the streets, finally catching up with her small body. Dominic led Tony to his private study, closing the soundproof door behind them. Tell me you found something. Tony dropped the folder on the mahogany desk and opened it with grim determination. I found more than something, boss. I found a connection that changes everything. He spread several documents across the desk. Photographs, financial records, employment histories. Dominic's eyes immediately locked onto a picture of a woman in her early 30s. Blonde hair, blue eyes, delicate features. The resemblance to Lily was unmistakable. Elena Morgan. Tony said, 34 years old. Worked as a senior accountant for a company called Midwest Financial Solutions, based in Chicago. An accounting firm? On paper, yes. In reality? Tony pulled out another document. Midwest Financial Solutions is a front company, a very sophisticated one, designed to launder money and manage illegal assets. It's owned by the Chicago Syndicate. Dominic felt his jaw tighten. The Chicago Syndicate was one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the country, and his most dangerous rival. Their territory ended where his began, and the tension between them had been building for years. Elena Morgan worked for them for over 8 years. She wasn't just any accountant, she was one of their top financial specialists. Had access to sensitive information, money flows, operational details. Tony paused. Her husband, Daniel Morgan, also worked for the organization. Lower level, but connected. He died 2 years ago in what official reports call an industrial accident. But we know better. Exactly. Men like Daniel Morgan don't die in accidents. They get eliminated when they become liabilities. Tony slid another photograph across the desk, a grainy image from a security camera, showing Daniel Morgan entering a warehouse 3 days before his death. My sources suggest he discovered something he shouldn't have, something dangerous enough to get him killed. Dominic stared at the timeline Tony had assembled. Daniel Morgan eliminated 2 years ago. Elena Morgan continuing to work for the syndicate, probably terrified but unable to escape. Then, 8 months ago, she vanished completely. 8 months ago, Dominic repeated slowly. The exact same time Serena Hartwell appeared in my life. Not a coincidence. Tony's voice was grave. I believe Elena knew about the operation against you. She was in a position to see financial movements, planning documents, personnel assignments. When she realized what was coming, she ran. But she left her daughter behind. Think about it, boss. If Elena took Lily with her, they would both be hunted. A woman traveling with a young child is easy to track, but a woman alone can disappear more effectively. Tony shook his head. She probably thought Lily would be safer in Las Vegas, outside the organization's immediate reach. She couldn't have predicted her daughter would end up on the streets. Dominic walked to the window, processing this cascade of revelations. Elena Morgan was not just a missing mother. She was a witness, a threat to whoever was orchestrating this elaborate assassination plot. If she was still alive, she was hiding, and she possessed information that could expose everything. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. He opened the study door to find Lily standing in the hallway, clutching her stuffed bear. I heard voices, she said quietly. Did you find out something about Mama? Dominic knelt to her level, choosing his words carefully. We're getting closer, Lily. Tell me before your mother disappeared. Did she seem different? Worried about anything? Lily nodded slowly. She was very scared. She kept checking the windows and locking the doors extra times. One night she held me really tight and said, If anything ever happens to me, don't trust anyone, Lily. Remember everything I taught you, and stay invisible. Stay invisible. The same survival instinct that had kept this child alive for 8 months on the streets. Before Dominic could respond, his phone buzzed with an incoming call from Tony, who had stepped out moments earlier. Boss, we cracked the encryption on those phone calls. I know who Serena's been reporting to. Tony's voice was tight with barely contained fury. It's Victor Crane. Dominic's blood turned to ice. Victor Crane, the boss of the Chicago Syndicate, the man who had ordered his father's murder 18 years ago. Victor Crane. The name echoed through Dominic's mind like a death knell, awakening ghosts he had buried 18 years ago. He could still see his father's face, pale and lifeless on that cold Chicago pavement. He could still feel the weight of the gun pressed into his 19-year-old hands by men who told him to run or die next. He could still hear the whispered name of the man responsible. Victor Crane had taken everything from him once. Now the bastard was trying to finish the job. Tony arrived back at the penthouse within the hour, carrying his encrypted laptop and enough evidence to confirm Dominic's worst fears. They gathered in the study while Lily played quietly with her dog in the living room, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing behind closed doors. Victor Crane, Tony began, pulling up photographs on his screen, is currently 62 years old. He took control of the Chicago Syndicate 30 years ago, and has been expanding ever since. Your father's assassination was part of his early territorial ambitions. He wanted Las Vegas even back then. Dominic stared at the photograph of his enemy. Silver hair, cold gray eyes, a face that looked more like a corporate executive than a crime lord. But those eyes held the same ruthless ambition that had ordered countless deaths. Show me the call transcripts. Tony opened another file. We managed to decrypt approximately 70% of Serena's communications. She's been reporting directly to Victor's inner circle for over 2 years. Weekly updates on your schedule, your security protocols, your business operations, your personal habits. 2 years. Dominic's voice was dangerously quiet. She's been spying on me since we met. The entire relationship was manufactured. Boss, Victor planted her in your life specifically for this operation. Tony scrolled through the documents. According to these conversations, the original plan was simple. After your wedding, Serena would have full access to the penthouse. She would disable the security systems one night and let Victor's assassination team inside. Quick, clean, untraceable. And then Victor takes everything I've built. Exactly. With you dead and no clear successor, your empire would collapse into chaos. Victor's people would move in, absorb your operations, and control both Chicago and Las Vegas. He's been planning this for years. Dominic clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. The woman sleeping beside him every night, whispering sweet lies against his skin, had been counting down the days until his murder. What was Serena promised in return? Tony hesitated before answering. $50 billion. A small fraction of your total assets, but enough to set her up for life anywhere in the world. $50 billion. The price tag on his head. There's more, Tony continued grimly. The transcripts mention someone called the accountant. They're worried about a potential leak. Someone who knows too much about the operation. Based on the timeline and context. Elena Morgan. It has to be. She worked directly with the financial planning for this operation. When she disappeared 8 months ago, Victor's people panicked. They've been searching for her ever since. Dominic turned to the window, watching the Las Vegas lights flicker below like dying stars. His mind raced through possibilities and implications. Elena Morgan had seen the blueprints for his assassination. She had run to protect herself, leaving her daughter behind in desperation. If Victor found her first, she would be silenced permanently. But if Dominic found her, Elena is the key, he said slowly. She knows names, dates, financial trails. She can expose Victor's entire operation and prove Serena's involvement beyond any doubt. Tony nodded. Finding her won't be easy. She's been hiding for 8 months from one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the country. Wherever she is, she's buried deep. Then dig deeper. Dominic turned from the window, his eyes burning with cold determination. Use every resource we have. Contact our people in Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles. Offer rewards for information. Someone, somewhere, has seen her. And if Victor finds her first, Dominic thought of Lily, innocently playing in the next room. The child who had saved his life with a whispered warning at a traffic light. The daughter still desperately searching for her mother. He won't. Dominic's voice hardened to steel. Find Elena Morgan, Tony. She's not just a witness anymore. She's the key to destroying Victor Crane once and for all. Serena returned from New York on a Thursday evening, glowing with excitement and carrying a garment bag that supposedly contained the wedding dress of her dreams. Darling, you won't believe how perfect it is, she gushed, pressing a kiss to Dominic's cheek as she swept into the penthouse. Mother cried when she saw me in it. Actual tears of joy. Dominic smiled and pulled her into his arms, fighting the urge to wrap his hands around her treacherous throat. I can't wait to see you walking down the aisle. The lies came easier than he expected. Perhaps because he had spent 18 years wearing masks of his own, hiding his true nature behind businessman smiles and calculated charm. Now he simply wore a different mask, the devoted fiancé, blind to the viper in his bed. That evening, he took Serena to dinner at Etoile, the most exclusive restaurant in Las Vegas. Private rooftop terrace, champagne that cost more than most cars, a view of the strip that made the city look almost beautiful. The perfect romantic setting for a man about to marry the love of his life. The perfect stage for gathering intelligence. The wedding preparations are exhausting, Serena sighed, sipping her champagne. Speaking of which, have you finalized security arrangements? I want everything to be perfect, with no unexpected surprises. There it was, the subtle probe, disguised as wifely concern. Actually, I've been thinking about that. Dominic leaned back casually, watching her face with new eyes. After the wedding, I'm planning to completely overhaul the penthouse security system. New codes, new protocols, new everything. Fresh start for our new life together. A flicker of something crossed Serena's features. Surprise? Concern? It vanished before he could identify it, replaced by her trademark sweet smile. That sounds wonderful, darling. When exactly were you planning to implement these changes? The week after we return from our honeymoon. I've already scheduled the technicians. Serena nodded slowly. her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. Dominic could almost see the calculations running behind her beautiful eyes. The current security codes would still be valid during the wedding and honeymoon. That information would certainly interest Victor Crane. Actually, Serena said suddenly, reaching across the table to take his hand. I've been thinking. Why wait 2 more weeks? We're both so busy with preparations, so stressed. Why don't we move the wedding up? We could do it this Saturday instead. Dominic kept his expression neutral despite the alarm bells screaming in his mind. Victor was getting impatient, pushing for acceleration. Something must have spooked them. This Saturday? That's only 4 days away. I know it's sudden. Serena squeezed his hand, her eyes wide and pleading. But I love you so much, Dominic. I don't want to wait another moment to be your wife. Every day apart feels like torture. The words sounded so genuine. The emotion looked so real. If Dominic hadn't known the truth, he would have been completely fooled. If that's what you want, my love, then Saturday it is. Serena's smile brightened with what appeared to be pure joy, but Dominic caught it just for an instant, a flash of triumph in her eyes, the satisfaction of a predator closing in on prey. You've made me so happy, she whispered. They finished dinner with more champagne and empty promises about their future together. Dominic played his role flawlessly, every kiss and caress a carefully calculated performance. Inside, he felt nothing but cold determination. Lily had been moved to a secure guest room accessible only through a hidden corridor, kept completely separate from the main living areas. Serena would never know she existed. Late that night, after Serena had fallen asleep with a satisfied smile on her face, Dominic slipped out of bed and made his way to Lily's room. He found her awake, sitting up in bed with her stuffed bear clutched tightly against her chest. Her blue eyes were wide with fear. "Mr. Blackwell," she whispered. "I had a nightmare." "What kind of nightmare?" The little girl's lip trembled. "I saw Mama. She was locked in a dark room, and bad men were hurting her. She was crying and calling my name, but I couldn't reach her." Dominic sat on the edge of her bed, his heart unexpectedly heavy. "It was just a dream, Lily. Your mother is Daddy." The words slipped out in a broken whisper, surprising them both. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so scared. Please find her. Please bring Mama home." Dominic froze. For the first time in 18 years, he felt something crack inside his carefully guarded heart. This child, this brave little girl who had saved his life with a whispered warning, was looking at him like he was her only hope in the world, and she had called him Daddy. The word Daddy echoed in Dominic's mind long after Lily had fallen back asleep, her small hand wrapped around his finger like a lifeline. He had never wanted children, never planned for them. His world was too dangerous, too stained with blood and betrayal for innocent souls. Yet here was this tiny warrior, this brave little girl who had somehow breached every wall he had spent 18 years constructing around his heart. By dawn, Dominic had made a decision. Finding Elena Morgan was no longer just about destroying Victor Crane. It was about reuniting a daughter with her mother. It was about keeping a promise to a child who had called him Daddy. He summoned every resource at his disposal. Tony coordinated teams across 5 states, calling in favors from contacts in law enforcement, private investigation firms, and the criminal underground. Marcus organized surveillance on all known properties connected to Victor Crane's organization. Money flowed like water, buying information from sources who normally wouldn't speak for any price. 2 days passed. The wedding was now 48 hours away. Then Tony burst into Dominic's study, breathless and grim-faced. "We found her." Dominic was on his feet instantly. "Where?" "Elena Morgan is alive, boss. But she's not hiding." Tony spread satellite photographs across the desk. "She's being held captive. Victor's people grabbed her 8 months ago, right after she tried to run. They've been keeping her in a secure location ever since." The photographs showed an industrial complex on the outskirts of Henderson, about 20 miles from Las Vegas. Abandoned warehouses surrounded by chain-link fencing and patrolled by armed guards. Why keep her alive all this time? Dominic studied the images intently. If she's a liability, why not eliminate her? Because she's insurance. Tony pointed to intercepted communications on his tablet. Elena knows everything, financial records, operational details, names and dates, that could bring down Victor's entire empire. She's his guarantee that nobody betrays him. Anyone who thinks about talking knows that Elena's life depends on their silence. Dominic's jaw tightened. A mother imprisoned for 8 months, separated from her child, kept alive only as a bargaining chip. And all the while, Lily had been wandering the streets alone, searching desperately for a woman who couldn't come home. "She didn't abandon Lily," he said quietly. "She was trying to protect her. That's what the evidence suggests. Elena tried to run when she realized what Victor was planning, but she knew if she took Lily, they would both be easier to track. A woman alone can disappear. A woman with a child cannot. Tony's voice softened. She made an impossible choice. Dominic thought of the survival skills Elena had taught her daughter, the warnings about trusting no one, the preparations for a day she prayed would never come. This woman had spent years preparing Lily for the worst, while hoping for the best. He had to tell the child something. She deserved to know. That afternoon, Dominic sat with Lily in the hidden guest room, holding her small hands in his much larger ones. The stray dog whom Lily had named Biscuit lay at their feet, sensing the gravity of the moment. "I have something important to tell you about your mama," Dominic began carefully. Lily's eyes widened with desperate hope. "You found her?" "Yes. She's alive, Lily. Your mother is alive." Tears spilled down the little girl's cheeks. "Where is she? Can I see her?" "Not yet. Your mama is in a dangerous place right now. Bad people are keeping her there because she tried to protect you." Dominic squeezed her hands gently. "She didn't leave because she stopped loving you. She left because staying would have put you in danger. Everything she did was to keep you safe. I knew it." Lily's voice cracked with emotion. "I knew Mama would never abandon me. I knew it." She threw her arms around Dominic's neck, sobbing into his shoulder. He held her tight, this fragile little girl who had already survived so much. "I'm going to bring her home, Lily. I promise you, no matter what it takes." "You promise?" "I promise." That evening, Tony called with the final piece of information. "Boss, we've pinpointed the exact location. Elena is being held in a warehouse on the eastern edge of Henderson. Light security during the day, heavier at night. We've identified guard rotations and entry points." Dominic stood at the window, watching the sunset paint Las Vegas in shades of blood and gold. "Prepare the extraction team. We move on Saturday, the same day as the wedding. Victor will be focused on the ceremony, waiting for Serena's signal. He won't expect a simultaneous strike on his prison. That's extremely risky, boss. Splitting our forces is exactly what they won't anticipate." Dominic turned from the window, his eyes cold with purpose. "We end this Saturday, Tony. All of it. Victor Crane, Serena, the entire conspiracy, and we bring Elena Morgan home to her daughter. 3 days remained until the wedding that would never truly happen." Dominic gathered his most trusted men in a secure underground bunker beneath one of his downtown properties. 12 men, total soldiers who had proven their loyalty through years of blood and sacrifice. Tony stood at the head of the table, spreading tactical maps and satellite imagery across the surface. "Gentlemen," Dominic began, his voice carrying the weight of command. "What I'm about to share doesn't leave this room. Anyone who breathes a word dies. Are we clear?" 12 heads nodded in solemn understanding. "Saturday is my wedding day. It will also be the day we dismantle Victor Crane's entire operation." Dominic pointed to the first map. "We're running 2 simultaneous operations. Plan A centers on the wedding ceremony at Lake Tahoe. Serena Hartwell, my so-called fiancée, is a plant, an assassin working for Victor. She's been feeding him information for 2 years, waiting for the perfect moment to let his men into my home." Murmurs of shock rippled through the room. Dominic silenced them with a raised hand. "On Saturday, we let the ceremony proceed normally. When Serena makes her move, when she signals Victor's team, we take her down. Our men will be positioned throughout the venue, disguised as catering staff and guests. Victor's assassins will walk into a trap." Tony took over, pointing to the second map. "Plan B is the extraction mission. Elena Morgan, a key witness with information that can destroy Victor's empire, is being held in this warehouse complex in Henderson. While the boss handles Serena at the wedding, my team hits the warehouse and rescues Elena." Dominic studied the warehouse schematics, memorizing every entry point and guard position. His instincts screamed at him to lead the rescue himself. Elena was Lily's mother. The promise he had made to that little girl burned in his chest like a sacred oath. "I should lead the extraction team," he said. "Elena is too important, no." Tony's voice was firm, almost defiant. "Boss, with all due respect, you need to be at that wedding. If you're not there, Serena won't commit. She'll sense something is wrong and warn Victor. The entire operation collapses." "Tony's right," Marcus added quietly. "You're the bait, sir. Without you, the trap doesn't work." Dominic clenched his fists but recognized the brutal logic. His presence at the wedding was essential to selling the deception. Serena needed to believe everything was proceeding according to Victor's plan. "Fine," Tony leads the rescue, "but I want constant communication. The moment Elena is secure, I want to know." "Understood, boss." That evening, after the tactical session concluded, Dominic found himself in Lily's room. The little girl was sitting on her bed, brushing Biscuit's matted fur with a comb she had found in the bathroom. She looked up as he entered, her blue eyes reflecting both hope and fear. "Is it happening soon?" she asked quietly. "The plan to save Mama?" Dominic sat beside her on the bed. "Saturday. Just 3 more days. Are you scared?" The question caught him off guard. Was he scared? Fear had been a foreign concept for so long, but looking at this child, contemplating the possibility of failing her, he felt something uncomfortably close to terror. "I'm determined," he answered carefully. "There's a difference." Lily set down the brush and turned to face him fully. "Can I ask you something? Anything. Why are you doing all this for me and Mama? We're nobody to you, just strangers." Dominic was silent for a long moment, searching for words that could explain feelings he barely understood himself. 18 years ago, he began slowly. "A very bad man killed my father. I was 19 years old, alone, with nothing but rage and grief. I swore that day that I would make that man pay." He met Lily's eyes. "That man is Victor Crane, the same person holding your mother captive." Lily's eyes widened. "He hurt your daddy too?" "Yes, and now I have the chance to stop him forever, not just for revenge, but to protect people like you and your mother." Dominic took her small hand in his. "This Saturday, I end it. For my father, for your mother, for us." Lily threw her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. "Please be careful, Daddy," she whispered. "I don't want to lose anyone else." Dominic held her tight, breathing in the innocent scent of her freshly washed hair. This child had given him something he thought he had lost forever, a reason to fight for more than just power. He kissed her forehead gently. "I'll bring your Mama home, little one. I promise you." Saturday arrived wrapped in deceptive sunshine and clear mountain skies. The Lake Tahoe estate sparkled like a jewel against the pristine blue water. White roses cascaded from every archway. Crystal chandeliers hung from outdoor pavilions. 200 guests filled the manicured gardens, politicians, business tycoons, celebrities, and hidden among them, 50 of Dominic's most lethal soldiers disguised as waiters, photographers, and security personnel. Everything was perfect. Everything was a lie. Dominic stood at the altar in his custom Italian tuxedo, watching Serena glide down the aisle like an angel descending from heaven. Her wedding dress was a masterpiece of silk and lace, hugging her figure before flowing into an endless train. Her dark hair was swept up elegantly, her face radiant with practiced joy. She looked like every man's dream bride. She was every man's nightmare. Back in Las Vegas, Lily waited in the penthouse with Marcus standing guard. Dominic had kissed her forehead that morning, promising to return with her mother before sunset. The memory of her hopeful blue eyes burned in his mind as Serena took her place beside him. The officiant began the ceremony, his voice droning through traditional vows about love, honor, and eternal commitment. Dominic recited his lines flawlessly, each word tasting like ash on his tongue. Serena gazed up at him with convincing adoration, squeezing his hands as if she truly loved him. The moment approached, the ring exchange. "Do you, Dominic Alexander Blackwell, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Dominic looked into Serena's eyes, those beautiful, treacherous eyes that had fooled him for 2 years. "Before I answer that," he said calmly, "I have something to say to my bride." A flicker of confusion crossed Serena's face. This was not in the script. "Actually, I'd like to address her by her real name." Dominic's voice carried across the silent crowd. "Sandra." The color drained from Serena's face instantaneously. Her grip on his hands went slack. Her eyes widened with the unmistakable terror of a predator suddenly realizing it had become prey. "I don't know what you're Sandra Reyes. Born in Phoenix. Recruited by Victor Crane 6 years ago. Planted in my life specifically to orchestrate my assassination." Dominic's voice remained eerily calm. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Gasps erupted from the crowd. Serena's mask shattered completely, her beautiful features twisting with fury and desperation. "You bastard." Before she could move, 4 of Dominic's men materialized from the crowd, seizing her arms and pinning her in place. She struggled wildly, screaming curses that stripped away every pretense of elegance. Then Dominic's phone vibrated with an urgent call from Tony. "Boss!" Tony's voice was strained with panic and pain. "We've been compromised. Victor knew we were coming, his men were waiting for us. Half my team is down." Dominic's blood ran cold. "What about Elena? They moved her before we arrived. But that's not the worst part." Gunfire crackled through the phone line. "Victor had another team hit the penthouse simultaneously. Marcus is injured. They took the girl, boss. They have Lily." The world stopped spinning. Everything Dominic had built, Every careful plan, every calculated move, none of it mattered anymore. Victor had been one step ahead all along. Someone had betrayed them. Where are they taking her? Tony's voice was ragged with desperation. Same location as Elena. The warehouse. Victor wants them both in one place, leverage against you. Dominic ended the call, his vision narrowing to a single burning point of focus. Serena was still struggling against his men, spitting venom and threats. He barely registered her existence anymore. His daughter was in Victor Crane's hands. Get her out of my sight, he commanded, gesturing toward Serena. Then, to Marcus on a second call. Prepare my helicopter. We're going to Henderson. Boss, it's a trap, I don't care if it's hell itself. Dominic's voice was colder than death. Victor has my daughter, and I'm going to burn his entire world to ash to get her back. Darkness swallowed everything. Lily woke slowly, her head throbbing with dull pain and her thoughts swimming through thick fog. The last thing she remembered was playing with Biscuit in the penthouse, waiting for Daddy to come home with Mama. Then strange men had burst through the door. Marcus had fought bravely, but there were too many. A cloth had covered her face, smelling sweet and sickly. And then, nothing. Now she found herself in a cold, damp room with concrete walls and a single flickering light bulb hanging from the ceiling. Her small wrists were bound together with rough rope that bit into her skin. The air smelled of rust and decay. Fear clawed at her chest, threatening to consume her entirely. But then her mother's voice echoed through her memory, calm and steady despite the terror of those final days together. Stay calm, Lily. Observe everything. Listen carefully. Wait for your opportunity. The little girl forced herself to breathe slowly, just like Mama had taught her. She studied the room methodically, one metal door, no windows, a pile of old boxes in the corner, water stains on the ceiling. She memorized every detail, searching for anything that might help her escape. Minutes passed, or perhaps hours. Time lost meaning in the darkness. Then the metal door screeched open, flooding the room with harsh fluorescent light from the corridor beyond. Two large men in dark suits dragged someone inside and threw them roughly to the floor before slamming the door shut again. Lily squinted through the sudden brightness, her heart pounding wildly. The figure on the floor was a woman. Thin, painfully thin, with matted blonde hair and bruises visible on her pale arms. Her clothes were dirty and torn, hanging off a frame that had clearly lost significant weight. But when she lifted her head, when those familiar blue eyes met Lily's, "Mama!" Elena Morgan's face transformed from exhausted despair to overwhelming shock. She scrambled across the concrete floor, her own bound hands reaching desperately for her daughter. "Lily? Lily? My baby? My sweet baby girl." Elena pulled her daughter into her arms, tears streaming down her hollow cheeks. "No, no, no, why are you here? How did they find you?" Lily buried her face in her mother's chest, sobbing uncontrollably. 8 months of loneliness, fear, and desperate searching collapsed into this single moment of reunion. Her mother was alive, broken and battered, but alive. "I looked everywhere for you, Mama, every single day. I never stopped looking." Elena held her daughter tighter, rocking her gently despite the ropes binding them both. "I know, sweetheart. I know. I'm so sorry. Mama is so sorry. Why did you leave?" Lily's voice cracked with months of suppressed anguish. "Why didn't you come back for me?" Elena pulled back slightly, cupping her daughter's tear-stained face with trembling hands. Her own eyes were red and swollen, haunted by guilt that had clearly tormented her for 8 long months. "I had to protect you, baby. The bad men, they were going to hurt us both. I knew too much about their plans, about Serena, about what they wanted to do to Mr. Blackwell." She stroked Lily's tangled hair. "I thought if I ran, if I disappeared, they would chase me and leave you alone. I thought you would be safe. Daddy found me," Lily whispered. "Mr. Blackwell, he took care of me. He promised to bring you home." Elena's eyes widened with surprise. "Dominic Blackwell? He's good, Mama. He's not like the bad men. He saved me." Before Elena could respond, the metal door crashed open again. Heavy footsteps echoed through the small room as a tall figure stepped inside, flanked by armed guards. Victor Crane was older than Lily had imagined. Silver hair, cold gray eyes, a face carved from cruelty and ambition. He wore an expensive suit that contrasted obscenely with the filthy prison he had created. A thin smile stretched across his lips as he surveyed the two captives huddled together on the floor. How touching. His voice was smooth as poison. "Mother and daughter, reunited at last. I almost feel guilty for interrupting such a tender moment." Elena pushed Lily behind her protectively, her thin body trembling but defiant. "Leave her alone, Victor. She's just a child. She knows nothing. Victor chuckled softly, crouching down to meet Elena's desperate gaze. She knows Dominic Blackwell. She warned him about Serena. That makes her very valuable leverage and very dangerous loose end. His gray eyes shifted to Lily, freezing her blood solid. Don't worry, little one. You won't suffer long. Neither of you will. The helicopter cut through the Nevada sky like a blade of vengeance. Dominic sat in the cabin, checking his weapons with mechanical precision. 2 pistols, extra magazines, a combat knife strapped to his thigh. His tuxedo jacket had been discarded, his white shirt now stained with sweat and determination. Beside him, 6 of his most lethal operatives prepared for war. The wedding guests were probably still in chaos back at Lake Tahoe. Serena was in custody, screaming about lawyers and diplomatic immunity. None of it mattered anymore. Only Lily mattered. Only Elena. ETA, 5 minutes. Boss, the pilot announced through the headset. Tony's voice crackled through the communication device in Dominic's ear. We've regrouped outside the warehouse perimeter. Lost 3 men in the initial ambush. But the remaining team is ready to breach on your signal. Victor has approximately 20 guards inside. Positions? Heavy concentration at the main entrance. Lighter coverage on the east side near the loading dock. We believe he's holding the hostages in the basement level. Dominic's jaw tightened. The basement, where Elena had been imprisoned for 8 months, where his daughter now waited in terror. We hit from all directions simultaneously. Create maximum chaos. I'm going straight for the basement. Boss, that's suicide. That's an order. The helicopter touched down 200 meters from the warehouse complex. Dominic was out before the skids fully settled, sprinting across the dusty terrain with his team flanking him. The setting sun painted everything in shades of blood and fire. Breach now. Explosions rocked the warehouse from 3 directions simultaneously. Windows shattered. Walls crumbled. Gunfire erupted from every corner as Dominic's men engaged Victor's guards in brutal combat. Dominic moved through the chaos like death itself, dropping enemies with precise shots before they could even raise their weapons. Years of survival in the underworld had honed his instincts to lethal perfection. He reached the basement entrance in under 2 minutes, leaving a trail of bodies behind him. The metal door was reinforced but not bulletproof. 3 shots destroyed the lock mechanism, and Dominic kicked it open with savage force. Victor Crane stood in the center of the room, his silver hair disheveled, and his expensive suit splattered with concrete dust. In one hand, he held a gun. With the other, he gripped Lily's arm, using her small body as a shield. Elena knelt nearby, hands still bound, her face a mask of desperate terror. Blackwell, Victor's voice echoed off the concrete walls. How predictable. The mighty crime lord, rushing to save a woman and child he barely knows. Let them go. Dominic's gun remained steady, aimed directly at Victor's head. This is between you and me. Victor laughed, a cold, empty sound, devoid of any humanity. Between us? You destroyed everything today. My operation, my spy, my plans, years of work, gone. His grip on Lily tightened, making her whimper. So now I take everything from you, starting with them. Daddy! Lily's terrified voice shattered something inside Dominic's chest. It's okay, baby. Everything's going to be okay, Victor sneered. Daddy? How touching. The orphan girl found herself a new father, and he's going to watch her die. Time slowed to a crawl. Dominic saw Victor's arm shift, the gun swinging away from Lily and toward Elena. The man intended to execute them one by one, while Dominic watched helplessly. Not today. Dominic fired first, his bullet grazing Victor's shoulder and forcing him to release Lily. The little girl scrambled toward her mother as Victor howled with rage and returned fire. 2 bullets struck Dominic simultaneously. One tore through his left shoulder, spinning him sideways. The second punched into his abdomen, a searing explosion of agony that dropped him to his knees. Blood bloomed across his white shirt like crimson flowers. But he had given Tony the opening he needed. The security chief appeared in the doorway behind Victor, his weapon raised. 2 shots rang out. Victor Crane's body jerked twice, then crumpled to the concrete floor, his gray eyes staring at nothing. 18 years of hatred, ended in seconds. Dominic tried to stand, but his legs refused to cooperate. The room was spinning, growing darker at the edges. He could hear screaming Lily's voice, Elena's voice, both crying out the same word over and over. Dominic! He collapsed onto the cold concrete, blood pooling beneath him. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Lily's tear-streaked face hovering above him, her small hands pressing desperately against his wounds. Don't die, Daddy. Please don't die. The underground medical facility existed on no map and in no official records. hidden beneath one of Dominic's downtown properties. It contained state-of-the-art surgical equipment, a team of discreet doctors who asked no questions, and enough security to repel a small army. This was where powerful men came to heal from wounds that couldn't be explained to regular hospitals. Tonight, it held the most powerful man in Las Vegas, fighting for his life. Dominic lay motionless on the operating table, his chest rising and falling with mechanical assistance. Tubes and wires connected him to machines that beeped and hummed in steady rhythm. The surgical team had worked for 6 hours, extracting bullet fragments and repairing damaged organs. Now all anyone could do was wait. "The next 48 hours are critical," Dr. Morrison told Tony, his face grave behind surgical mask. "The abdominal wound caused significant internal bleeding. We've done everything possible, but his body needs to fight now. If he survives the next few days, his chances improve dramatically." In the private recovery room, Lily refused to leave Dominic's bedside. The little girl had been examined, treated for minor injuries, and offered a comfortable bed in another room. She had rejected everything. Instead, she sat in a chair far too large for her small body, clutching Dominic's limp hand with fierce determination. "He promised to bring Mama back," she whispered to anyone who would listen. "He kept his promise. Now he has to wake up." Elena sat nearby, watching her daughter with a mixture of heartbreak and wonder. 8 months of captivity had left her physically weakened, her cheeks hollow, her body frail, her wrists scarred from countless restraints. But her eyes remained sharp, taking in everything around her with the same observant intelligence she had passed to her daughter. "Tell me about him," Elena said softly, breaking the silence. "Tell me everything." Lily looked up, her blue eyes red from crying but still burning with conviction. "He found me on the street. Mama, I was so hungry and scared, but I remembered what you taught me. I watched people, listened to them, stayed invisible." She stroked Dominic's hand gently. "I saw Miss Serena with bad men. I heard them talking about hurting him, so I warned him." "You warned Dominic Blackwell? A complete stranger?" "You always said to help good people when we can, and he seemed good, Mama, even though he looked scary at first." Lily's voice cracked. "He could have ignored me. Everyone else did. But he came back. He found me, fed me, gave me a real bed to sleep in. He called me his daughter." Elena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She looked at the unconscious man who had risked everything, his empire, his plans, his very life to save a child he had known for barely a week. "He's not what I expected," Elena murmured. "I spent years working for Victor, seeing the worst of that world. I thought all crime lords were the same. He's different," Lily insisted. "He's kind underneath. He just hides it because he's been hurt too." The days that followed blurred together in an exhausted haze. Elena slowly regained her strength, eating proper meals and sleeping in short intervals, but she spent most of her waking hours beside Dominic, helping the nurses change his bandages, monitoring his vital signs, talking to him, even though he couldn't respond. "Thank you," she whispered during the quiet night hours, holding his hand the way Lily did. "Thank you for saving my daughter, for loving her when I couldn't be there, for giving her hope when she had nothing." She told him about Lily's first steps, her first words, the way she used to laugh before the world became dangerous. She told him about Daniel, her late husband, and the fear that had consumed their final years together. She told him things she had never told anyone, secrets whispered to an unconscious man who might never wake to hear them. Lily watched her mother lean closer to Dominic, adjusting his blankets, smoothing his hair. The little girl smiled despite her worry. Something was changing. Something quiet and fragile was growing in this room full of pain. On the 5th day, just as dawn light filtered through the small basement window, Dominic's eyelids fluttered. Elena had fallen asleep in her chair, exhausted from another night of vigilance. Her head rested on the edge of his bed, her hands still wrapped around his fingers. Dominic opened his eyes slowly, blinking against the harsh fluorescent lights. Pain radiated through his entire body, but he was alive. He could feel warmth against his hand, soft, gentle warmth. He turned his head weakly and found Elena sleeping beside him. Her blonde hair spread across the white sheets, her face peaceful, for perhaps the first time in months. His heart, battered and barely beating, somehow found the strength to skip. Elena startled awake at the slight movement beneath her hand. Her eyes flew open, disoriented for a moment before reality crashed back. The medical room, the beeping machines, and Dominic, staring at her with dark eyes that were finally, blessedly open. "You're awake," she breathed, hardly daring to believe it. "Daddy!" Lily launched herself from her chair, and threw her small arms around Dominic's neck, sobbing uncontrollably into his shoulder. The impact sent pain shooting through his wounds, but Dominic didn't care. He wrapped his weak arms around the trembling child and held her as tightly as his damaged body would allow. "I thought you were going to die," Lily wailed. "I was so scared. I prayed every night like Mama taught me. I promised God I would be good forever if he let you wake up. I'm here, little one." Dominic's voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "I promised I would bring your mama home. I don't break my promises." He looked up at Elena, who stood beside the bed with tears streaming silently down her hollow cheeks. Even weakened and worn from months of captivity, she was beautiful. Not in the polished, artificial way Serena had been beautiful, but in a way that spoke of strength, resilience, and unconditional love. "Thank you," Elena said, her voice cracking with emotion. "You saved our lives, both of us. You didn't have to, you didn't even know me, but you risked everything." "Lily is my daughter," Dominic replied simply. "That makes you family too." The weeks of recovery that followed became something Dominic had never experienced before. Real, genuine healing, not just of his physical wounds, but of something deeper, something he hadn't even known was broken. Elena tended to him with unwavering dedication. She changed his bandages with gentle hands, administered his medications on schedule, helped him take his first painful steps when the doctors finally allowed him to walk. Through it all, they talked. For hours, days, about everything. Elena told him about meeting Daniel in college, two young people falling in love without knowing the dangerous world they would eventually enter. She told him about discovering she was pregnant with Lily, about the terror of bringing a child into a life controlled by violent men. "Daniel tried to get us out," she confessed one evening, sitting beside his bed in the soft lamplight. "He gathered evidence, planned to trade it for protection, but Victor found out. The accident that killed him was a message to anyone else thinking of betraying the organization. And you stayed? I had no choice. Victor made it clear that Lily and I would die if I ran." Elena's hands trembled in her lap, so I kept my head down, did my job, and prayed every day that someday we would escape. Then I discovered the plan against you, the full scope of it. I knew if I stayed, I would be complicit in murder. So I ran. Leaving Lily behind must have destroyed you. Elena's eyes filled with fresh tears. Every single day. But I thought Victor's people would ignore her. A child couldn't hurt them. I was wrong. And she ended up on the streets because of my choice. Dominic reached out and took her hand the first time he had initiated physical contact between them. Your choice saved her life. If you had taken her with you, Victor would have found you both. Lily survived because you taught her how to survive. Elena looked at their intertwined fingers, then up at his face. Something shifted in the air between them, charged and uncertain. "You're not what I expected," she whispered. "I spent years believing all crime lords were monsters. Maybe I was," Dominic admitted, "before Lily knocked on my window. Before you." Their conversations grew longer, more intimate. Dominic found himself sharing things he had never told anyone. The loneliness of his childhood after his father's death, the empty ruthlessness that had defined his rise to power, the hollowness that had consumed him until a 6-year-old girl cracked open his armor with 3 simple words. "She's going to kill you." Those words had saved his life, but it was the word that came later, Daddy, that had saved his soul. Elena was intelligent, brave, and fiercely devoted to her daughter. She challenged Dominic's assumptions, laughed at his dry humor, and saw through his tough exterior to the damaged man beneath. She was nothing like the women he had known before, no hidden agendas, no calculated seduction, just genuine warmth and quiet strength. Dominic realized with startling clarity that he was falling for her. One afternoon, while Elena helped Lily with improvised schoolwork in the corner of the medical room, Dominic watched them together. Mother and daughter, reunited at last. Their blonde heads bent close as they worked through math problems. Lily glanced up, caught him staring at her mother, and grinned mischievously. Later that evening, she tugged Elena into the hallway outside Dominic's room. "Mama," she whispered conspiratorially, "have you noticed the way Daddy looks at you?" 1 month after the warehouse rescue, Dominic Blackwell stood on the balcony of his new estate, watching the sunset paint the Nevada desert in shades of amber and rose. The penthouse at the Obsidian had been sold. Too many ghosts lingered there, memories of Serena's betrayal, of sleepless nights wondering who wanted him dead, of the cold emptiness that had defined his existence for 18 years. Instead, he had purchased a sprawling Mediterranean villa on the outskirts of Las Vegas, surrounded by gardens and high walls that offered both beauty and security. A fresh start, a real home. Behind him, through the open French doors, He could hear Lily's laughter ringing through the house. She was helping Elena set the table for dinner, debating passionately about which flowers should go in the centerpiece. Biscuit, now well-fed and glossy-coated, bounded between them, barking excitedly at the commotion. So much had changed in 30 days. Serena Hartwell, or Sandra Reyes, as the court records now identified her, had been convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, espionage, and racketeering. The federal prosecutors had built an airtight case using the evidence Tony's team had gathered. She would spend the next 30 years in a maximum security prison, her beauty fading behind concrete walls and iron bars. Victor Crane was dead, buried in an unmarked grave that nobody would ever visit. His Chicago empire had crumbled within weeks of his death, torn apart by lieutenants scrambling for power and federal investigations that swept up dozens of his associates. And Dominic himself was transforming. He had begun systematically dismantling the illegal portions of his operation, transitioning toward legitimate business ventures. The casinos remained. Gambling was legal in Nevada. After all, but the protection rackets, the smuggling operations, the shadow dealings that had made him feared throughout the underworld were being quietly dissolved. It would take years to complete the transformation, but for the first time in his life, Dominic was building something he could be proud of, something he could leave to his daughter. Lily had started first grade at an exclusive private school, where she quickly became known for her sharp intelligence and unusual maturity. She made friends easily, despite her unconventional background, charming teachers and classmates alike with the same observant wisdom that had once saved Dominic's life. Elena had found work at a prestigious accounting firm, her skills finally being used for legal purposes. She left for the office each morning with a smile and returned each evening to help with homework and prepare family dinners. The haunted look in her eyes was slowly fading, replaced by something that looked remarkably like peace. They had fallen into a routine that felt natural, inevitable. Breakfast together before school and work. Dinner around the large oak table that Dominic had specifically chosen because it encouraged conversation. Weekend trips to the park, the zoo, the movies, ordinary activities that felt extraordinary to people who had never experienced normalcy. Dominic discovered he loved reading bedtime stories to Lily, doing silly voices for different characters, while she giggled beneath her princess blankets. He loved watching Elena cook, humming softly to herself as she moved around the kitchen. He loved the way they both looked at him now, not with fear or calculation, but with genuine affection. This was what he had been missing all along. Not power, not wealth, not control over empires and enemies. Family, love, belonging. Tonight, after Lily had been tucked into bed with Biscuit curled at her feet, Dominic and Elena found themselves alone on the balcony. The stars had emerged overhead, scattered diamonds across velvet darkness. A bottle of wine sat half empty between them. "She's happy here," Elena said softly, gazing out at the garden below. "Happier than I've ever seen her." "What about you?" Dominic asked, his heart suddenly pounding. "Are you happy?" Elena turned to look at him, her blue eyes reflecting starlight. "I never thought I could feel safe again. But here, with you. Yes, I'm happy." Dominic set down his wineglass and moved closer to her, close enough to see the faint freckles across her nose, the gentle curve of her lips. "Elena, I know this might seem strange. We've only known each other for a month, but I need you to know something." He took a deep breath, feeling more vulnerable than he had during any gunfight. "I want you to stay, not just for Lily, not just because this arrangement is convenient." Elena's breath caught. "Then why?" "Because of you." Dominic reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands. "Because somewhere between bullet wounds and bedtime stories, I fell in love with you, and I don't want to spend another day of my life without you in it." Elena's heart stopped. The world around her faded into silence, the chirping crickets, the distant hum of the city, even the gentle breeze that rustled through the garden below. All she could see was Dominic's face, illuminated by starlight, his dark eyes holding hers with an intensity that left her breathless. You mean that?" Her voice trembled like autumn leaves. "I have never spoken truer words in my entire life." Dominic's thumbs gently stroked her cheeks, wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "You are the most extraordinary woman I have ever met, Elena. Your strength, your courage, your devotion to Lily, everything about you amazes me." Elena reached up and placed her hands over his, holding them against her face as if afraid he might disappear. "I thought I would never feel this way again," she whispered. "After Daniel died, I locked my heart away. I convinced myself that love was too dangerous, too painful." She took a shaky breath. "But then I watched you with Lily. I saw how you held her when she had nightmares, how you read her stories with silly voices just to hear her laugh, how you looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the universe. She is precious. You love her like your own daughter. A child you had known for barely a week, and you were willing to die for her. Elena's voice cracked with emotion. That kind of love, unconditional, sacrificial, pure. I never expected to find it in a man like you. And somewhere along the way, while I was watching you become her father, I fell in love with you too. Dominic leaned closer, his forehead resting gently against hers. Then stay with me, he breathed. Not as a guest, not as an arrangement. Stay as my partner, my equal, my love. Their first kiss was soft and tender, tasting of wine and promises beneath the endless Nevada sky. It was not the passionate, desperate collision of two lonely souls, but something deeper, the gentle joining of two broken hearts finally finding their way home. 3 months later, on a quiet Sunday evening, the three of them sat around the oak dining table that had become the heart of their home. Lily was chattering about her school project while Elena served homemade lasagna, Dominic's favorite, which she had spent all afternoon perfecting. Everything seemed perfectly ordinary. Then Dominic cleared his throat and reached into his pocket. Lily, he said calmly, I need you to be my witness for something very important. The little girl's eyes widened as Dominic stood from his chair and moved to Elena's side. He lowered himself onto one knee, producing a small velvet box that he opened to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. No grand gestures, no elaborate surprises, just a man, a woman, and the child who had brought them together, gathered around a family dinner table. Elena Morgan, Dominic said, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. You and Lily are my entire world. I spent 18 years building an empire, thinking power and wealth were all that mattered. I was wrong. What matters is this, these moments, this family, this love. He took her trembling hand. Will you marry me? Elena's eyes flooded with tears. Before she could speak, Lily jumped out of her chair. Say yes, Mama. Say yes, say yes, say yes. Laughter bubbled through Elena's tears as she looked from her ecstatic daughter to the man kneeling before her, the man who had transformed from a feared crime lord into the loving father and partner she never dared to dream existed. Yes, she whispered. Of course yes. 1,000 times yes. Dominic slipped the ring onto her finger, then rose and pulled both Elena and Lily into his arms. They stood there, wrapped together in a three-way embrace, a family forged not by blood but by choice, courage, and love. Thank you, Dominic whispered into Lily's hair, for knocking on my window that day. You saved my life, little one. Lily looked up at him with those wise blue eyes that had seen too much but still believed in goodness. Thank you for stopping, Daddy. She smiled, radiant and peaceful. I always knew everything would be okay. Dear beloved viewers, this touching story reminds us of profound truths that we often forget in our busy lives. Family is not defined by blood, it is defined by love, sacrifice, and the choice to stand beside each other through darkness and light. Sometimes the greatest blessings arrive disguised as the most unexpected encounters. A homeless child at a traffic light. A moment of kindness extended to a stranger. A decision to listen when the world tells us to ignore. Dominic Blackwell had everything money could buy, yet his heart remained empty until a 6-year-old girl taught him what truly matters. Elena Morgan lost everything she loved, yet found the courage to begin again when hope seemed impossible. And Lily, brave, wise, extraordinary Lily, proved that even the smallest among us can change the world simply by caring enough to try. How does this story resonate with your own life? Have you ever experienced a chance encounter that changed everything? Have you found family in unexpected places? We would love to hear your thoughts and feelings deep from your heart. Please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with friends and family who might need this message of hope today. Your support helps us continue bringing you inspiring stories every single day. We wish everyone watching this video good health, abundant joy, and peace in your daily life. May you find your own unexpected blessings, your own moments of connection, your own family of choice. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Goodbye for now, and we will see you in the next video.